my inspiration started with Buckminster Fuller. Is everyone familiar with who that is? The dome we're sitting in was his creation, and he though also coined the word synergy, which is the idea of doing more with less, or that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's like unprecedented, and he very much focused on using designing the most appropriate and with the way the universe designs, and using principles along those lines. So that was, I'd say, one major influence in the work I do, although what I do is not directly related.
Yeah, I think every single artist can be inspiring. I echo all the names that I've heard passed around the table so far. I'd add to that Matty Carwine. It's been a big influence to me. I was growing up, I had a big book of Salvador Dali and M.C. Escher, and at an early age, those definitely planted some really heavy seeds in my mind as I grew up. And I think I'm fascinated by just the 1,000-year-old conversation of our history, and how all these different movements have evolved as technology and their science has evolved. I've always felt kind of a kinship with the futurists and the cubists. I like those guys a lot. Marcel Duchamp, especially attracted to the artists that really made people question not only what was beautiful, but made them question reality around them. I think art that propels us as a species is the art that I've always had a very deep respect for.
I should also mention, I only mentioned one name, and so my work relates a lot to sacred geometry, and John Michel, who just passed away, I think last year or the year before, and right before he died, he published a giant book on sacred geometry, and I've been reading all of his books, and amazing understanding and way of communicating, just even more than sacred geometry. You should look into John Michel.
Finally, I'm also inspired by enlightened people who've got something to say that can often trigger a painting unto itself. I'm sitting amongst the people that I'm inspired by. So I've been tracking them down, and I've studied with Bonnie, with Huber, and with Daniel, and I'm happy with that. And like Daniel, recently I've been studying with Andrew Gonzalez, who's I just adore. America, yeah. You've got to look him up, it's exquisite.
Hey, how you doing? It's on. And recently Melbourne, and I work as a professional commercial artist for the last 7 years. So I suppose my first question is, are any of you guys based in Melbourne, and do you run classes as such in Melbourne? And if you don't live in Melbourne, I suppose the question is, how have you moved in your life to a point where maybe you were doing something else before, and that art has become a main personal art, has become a main drive for you? Because as a commercial artist, I do a lot of 3D art for car companies and movies and stuff like that, which it's fine work, but I'm having difficulty moving into doing more personalized work and finding the space and the time for that. So yeah, it's kind of two questions. If you're in Melbourne, where are you? And if you're not, how did you get where you are?
Yep, I'm based in Melbourne. I was born here. As far as the second part of your question, when you were speaking about being a commercial artist and going into the field of more self-expressive fine art, the example of Robert Venosa he was also a commercial artist. He was doing work for magazines and advertising and things like that, and eventually stumbled upon these techniques and found his own sort of path, and became one of the most incredible artists of our generation. So yeah, probably if you make artwork about things that are personal to you, about things that you care about, and follow the sort of lines of your personal meaning, then that can really be fruitful, I think. Yeah.
I'm based in Melbourne, so I've got my art school there. Yeah, basically for me, like I've studied so many different things to try and answer that exact question, because there's more to that question than just the art path. There's the whole how do we create reality path, and the whole magic path, and the whole all that kind of thing. So it's quite a complex, involved question, because sometimes, you know, we have sabotage programs in our subconscious, or we think we can't do things, or we're running programs that are from the collective consciousness or whatever. So as a collection of, you know, I've just studied how to focus, how to direct one's energy into a certain path. It's quite, you know, not such a straightforward thing to do. And I mean, yeah, I suppose the broader question is how to create reality. How do you know what you're actually wanting, and also know that you can actually create this in a matrix, as I call it, that's not conducive to helping the artist generally. You know, sometimes you've got to go against the grain as to how you think things work to actually get what you're wanting. So I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
I'm also based in Melbourne. I've just recently had the opportunity to run a sacred art studio every Wednesday at the Northcote Uniting Church Hall. And sorry?
Is it still running? Is it something
It
that...
only just started 2 weeks ago. We haven't had an official thing, but I just wanted to create a sacred ground hub for visionary artists who wish to connect. So it's only $5 a night to cover the rent, and I just want to pull the community together. So that's one project. Also, I've been involved with bringing Daniel Moranti to Australia, so I'll be hosting classes with Daniel. And I also believe that art and soul and spirituality are intermingled, so I run retreats to Bali so that we can actually let the mind, the body and the spirit all be nurtured and then pour into art. So there's a flyer thing in the back corner about the classes with Dan.
Cool. Thank you.
Perhaps gentlemen might like to talk about the workshops that you have coming up in the next couple of weeks, just to invite these people, wherever they might be in the country, to come along.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, this is becoming more interesting to me, is teaching and helping people just engage with some fundamentals, like some ABCs that can just be polished your whole life and give some really good principles from which to do anything from. And yeah, this is something that I've been rolling out back in the UK the past 6 months, and like when I arrived in Melbourne 10 days ago, we worked with several amazing souls, some of which you hadn't actually painted before, and the results were very nice, very beautiful, very honoured position to be facilitating that for people. But back to your question about how do you move out of something that your heart's not really into. I'm getting the feeling the more you put the more you flow with your primary energy, like where your passion, where your desire really is, your energy will be so much higher to flow with that. When you're doing something that your heart's not into, or your primary energies aren't into, it's hard. The energy isn't quite there. So I'm actually in transition. I'm still doing some programming and stuff to make money, and some of it's now coming from painting sales and teaching and touring and so on. But I'm feeling more and more it's like making leaps of faith and being initiated further and getting those affirmations and listening to your environment and knowing when to make those steps. So it's an organic process of transformation. So yeah, sounds like you've got the skills though. It sounds like you've got a good base in your skills to kind of move into something that's more about your personal expression.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something where I'm not getting a lot from what I am doing, and it's something where I need to progress. There's something that's more fulfilling.
Well, good luck, brother.
I live in San Francisco, but I will be in Australia for the next month, and we do have a workshop scheduled in Melbourne under with Qantas, which is an art school there. I'll double check the date, but we're doing Melbourne and Brisbane and Byron. But to touch on the point about the commercial art, that's something I really resonate a lot with when you ask that question. It's a really large conversation for any artist. Ultimately, it all comes down to energy. What you're doing is you're giving energy, and it's a relationship between giving and receiving energy of some sort of form. And a lot of it, what I found, is it breaks down to being really conscious and aware of who you're giving energy to and what you're getting out of that deal. And a lot of it really comes down to how much you can really trust yourself and how much you believe in yourself. A lot of times I'll take I work for a lot of different clients. There's a lot of clients that I've worked for in the past that once I was able to recognize that the energy I was giving them was not something positive, I chose not to do that anymore. There's a lot of clients, and there's a lot of people that I just won't work for. It's kind of just a personal integrity, but you have to, once you realize the consequences of where you put yourself out, because as an artist, it's really exciting. There's different layers. As a commercial artist, just being able to support yourself creatively can be amazing. And then after you get to a point of a certain amount of security, then you can start refining that to really being more selective about where you're choosing to give your energy. And there's times where I'll take, I try not to do too many questionable clients, but there are sometimes I feel like I'm buying my own time back if I can work with someone, because if I can make enough to do one job, then I can buy my freedom back, and it's not really a healthy relationship, because at the end of the day it really just comes down to how much you can really believe in yourself and take that risk to just do what you feel is your highest intention, and trusting yourself and putting it out there is probably the most powerful thing you can do with that.
A few questions you were saying, answered heaps of them already. My general question is, how important is it for you to have to activate? I use the word activate the rest of the human race. Is that your motivation to activate? And do you feel an intrinsic desire to create from sacred geometry? And does it come from deep within you, or did it come from something